Today I'm going to talk about introverts in love. Hi, I'm Annie, and I'm okay. I'm feeling pretty good, actually. It's the 3-day Memorial weekend. I didn't plan to take the weekend off. I would have worked if I could, but it just turned out that I had all 3 days off, and so does my partner. It's nice. We're relaxing and making art. He's brewing a fresh batch of beer right now, and I am firing up my kiln for the first time in 15 years and working on some exciting ceramic projects. This is a purely self-indulgent video about how I met my person about 11 years ago. We are this week going to celebrate our 11-year anniversary, and this is the story of how we met. He and I are both extremely introverted, like way on the very introverted end of the spectrum. So let's get this party started with a joke, because one of my favorite things about my partner is how funny he is, and we laugh so much. So a few years ago on a sunny afternoon, we were sitting out on the back patio just enjoying the cocktail hour, and I realized that we were coming up on our 5-year anniversary. And I said, "Hey, we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. We got to do something special." And he looked up from what he was reading and he said, you mean like a murder-suicide pact?" And I just busted up laughing. He's so funny, and that's why I love him, that he's my funny guy. And then just this morning, he was reading the news and telling me about what he was reading. And so he was telling me about the horrible hurricane that they're having right now in the Bahamas. And it's completely devastating. And I guess just to lighten the mood or change the subject, I said, "What about all the people with honeymoon reservations? What are they going to do?" He said, "Screw those people. They're stupid." And I said, "Yeah, I guess they shouldn't have planned their honeymoon during hurricane season." And he said, "No, they shouldn't have gotten married." I just thought, he just cracks me up. Funny. So anyway, that's the kind of thing we laugh at and the kind of humor we have. And we are not married. We don't have any plans to ever be married. We just don't feel like the government needs to be involved in our relationship. And also because we are both self-employed, it would be disadvantageous for us to get married. We would really have to pay more in health insurance if we did that. So, and many other financial reasons. So we would do it if we needed to for some legal reason. So 11 years ago on the 4th of July, we met at the dog park. But actually, I had seen this guy about a week before at the hardware store. So I was in the hardware store and he was kneeling down looking at the bottom shelf of some plumbing equipment. And something inside of me said, "Go meet that guy. You have to introduce yourself to this guy." And it was such a strong compulsion to somehow interact with him, somehow ask him a question or meet him in some way. But then there was this other part of myself saying, "That's ridiculous. Leave the guy alone." Like he's hot, right? So that's why you're having these thoughts. And then there was another voice in my head saying, "No, it's not because he's hot. You have to meet him. This is very important. Go introduce yourself to that guy." So there was this war going on in my head, this back and forth. And I bought the things that I needed from the hardware store and just walked away and started walking home. But even as I was walking home, I was feeling this pull like, "No, go back. You have to meet that guy." And it was just the weirdest argument that I was having inside of my head. And finally, I just told myself, if this guy is really that important, then you'll run into him again. And so then a few days later, I did run into him again. I was taking my old girl Bombay to the dog park. She's a black standard poodle that I used to have. It was the 4th of July, and I wanted to take her to the dog park so that she could get all her wiggles out because I know there were going to be fireworks later, and I wanted to just keep her inside after dark. So we got to the dog park and there he was. There was my guy just sitting on the grass, and he was throwing the ball for his girl Lila, a chocolate lab. Anyway, Bombay was such a social butterfly. She loved meeting new people, and particularly men. She was so flirtatious with men. And so I saw this handsome guy sitting over the grass, and I thought, that's the same guy. And I had the same thoughts on my head, like, introduce yourself to him. No, don't. Leave him alone. It was just this tug of war in my mind, trying to talk myself into leaving the guy alone. And then Bombay, of course, just walked right up to him and introduced herself. And she just got right in the middle of their game that they're playing with the ball. And she was grabbing the ball away from the puppy and asking the handsome guy to throw the ball for her. And so that was my way in. So there I had an opportunity to walk over and interject myself into the game and kind of get my dog away from him. And so I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get my dog." And I was trying to get her to play ball with me so she would leave the guy and his puppy alone. And that's how we met. And we got to talking a little bit. And I just asked him, "What have you been doing today? What does your day look like?" And he told me about this sculpture that he was making. He described the metal and wire armature that he was using. And it was a sculpture that he was making out of concrete. So there's like a wire armature and then concrete coating on the outside. And I could follow the conversation very easily because I have a background in art and I've worked in pretty much every medium. So I was really following it. But I was also reading in between the lines. So as he was telling me the story of making the art, I was getting so much more information from him, just a general impression of his character. And I don't want to be all hippy dippy, but just sort of an energetic feeling of who he was and what he was about. So, this story he was telling me was just about a sculpture he was making. But I remember when he was finished with the story, I said something like, "You and I are a lot alike." And that freaked him right the fuck out because, that's creepy. So he thought, "Oh, great, another crazy girl." Because he is very attractive. He gets hit on all the time, even today. Anytime he goes to the grocery store, women of all ages are attracted to him because he's super, super hot. So he was thinking like, "Oh no, another psycho girl, I've been speaking to her for 5 minutes and she's now saying that we have so much in common." But the funny thing to me is that I was right. What I saw in that moment, the impression that was flowing, from him to me about who he was, I really saw this similarity that he and I have. And we also have so many differences, but we have this kind of core essential thing in common. And it's just our creative minds and what we value creatively. We're both highly creative and highly value just going to our separate corners and working on projects. And we allow each other to do that. So he allows me to go away for hours and work on a project quietly alone, and I allow him to do the same thing. And we just value creative expression so highly, and there's no agenda. Over the years, more and more, I've tried to monetize some of my art just because my mom is always pushing that. Like, oh man, anytime I make anything, she's like, do you think you could monetize that? And just for practical purposes, I've tried to monetize just because I need the money so that I can buy more art supplies. So I have my Etsy store where I make these pillows. And then now also I've returned to ceramics and I'm working on some ceramic projects right now. I'm making these little earrings out of ceramics, which is really fun. So anyway, that was just a funny moment where, I was coming on a little bit too strong, he thought, and he was like, "Whoa, be careful of this one." I went back to the dog park a lot after that, hoping to run into him. And we sort of fell into this rhythm where we were both going to the dog park around 8 p.m. And it got to the point where we were just both arriving at the same time. So we lived at that time on opposite sides of the dog park, and I would be approaching the north gate and opening it, and I could see him across the park opening the south gate at the exact same time. So it was clear that we were arriving at the dog park at the exact same time every night, and we would spend the whole evening, just hours and hours. Sometimes we would stay there until midnight, just laying on the grass and talking about all kinds of stuff. And we never exchanged phone numbers or email. We just met at the dog park every night. He is a very suspicious, guarded, private person. So there was no way he was going to give me his number or tell me where he lived. And he also was just very leery of any romantic agenda at all. And he could tell that I had a crush on him, but he let me know in no uncertain terms that we were never going to be together. It was just never, ever a possibility. And he really needed me to know that because he wanted me to drop my agenda so that our friendship could unfold organically. So I really had to grow up. I had to search my soul and drop some of my old patterns and just not crush on him. So I was really making a concerted, grown-up effort to just accept that and then still enjoy our friendship. Because something was telling me, even if I'm never with this guy romantically, he's important. I feel like I'm going to know this guy when I'm in my 70s. This is an important relationship. And even if I'm not going to know him in my 70s, there's some influence that he's going to have on my life that is very, very important. So I need to drop my agenda and just respect what he's telling me and be a good friend to him. And so that's what I did to the best of my ability. But I did my best because I just respected him as a person so much, and I just wanted to learn from him. There was something very important happening between us. And we were coming towards the end of the summer, and the weather was starting to change. It was going to get really rainy. The dog park was going to be really muddy, and I was worried that I wasn't going to see him as much, because we were spending a lot of time together on these warm summer evenings where the sun stays out really late and it's just a very comfortable to be outdoors in the evening time. But we were moving more into the fall and winter. I knew that the dog park was just going to be a mud pit. It was just going to be uncomfortable to stay outside in the damp cold for very long. So I was really worried that I was going to lose contact with this guy. And then one evening in late summer, he brought it up. And he said, the seasons are changing and it's going to get really cold and rainy and the dog park's going to get really muddy. And I think that you and I are going to have to go on walks together this winter instead of meeting at the dog park. And when he said that, I'm getting teared up right now. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. And he said, I want to give you my number so we can do that, so we don't lose contact with each other when the weather changes. And it was just the most exciting moment of my life. It made me so happy. Just to think that we were going to continue these conversations and to know that our friendship and our conversations were just as important to him as they were to me. And, I had these instant fantasies of wearing a raincoat and walking through the rain with him, walking our dogs and talking. And I think I went out the next day to REI and I bought a really good rain jacket because I didn't have a really good one for, taking long walks in the rain. I was just so into this idea. So then we had each other's numbers, and things moved somewhat quickly after that. At some point in very early September, on September 4th, he called me and invited me over to his house. And it was just so amazing that he told me where he lived because he was such a private person. And I went to his house, and it's just this magical place because it's very small, like 420 square feet. It's still just over there. I have a little spot here that's 500 square feet, and he has one that's 420. And we live like this now because there's not enough space for us to both cram into his house. And this space opened up. So his place, he built it himself. It used to just be a workshop, but he fixed the inside and made the kitchen, and it has all this handmade furniture that he made himself, and it's just beautiful. It's this magical, stylish place. And just being allowed to be in his personal space just felt so special to me, to see his world and all the things he had created. And he's just a very, very special guy. And, that's just scratching the surface. There is so much that I could say about him, and I feel like this video is getting kind of long. But let me just tell you a few other things that I love about him. First of all, he's a genius. He has the mind of an engineer, and he makes things and he fixes things. He not only can make beautiful works of art, but he can do really technical, engineering type stuff. For example, he made our coffee roaster. So he fabricated it entirely. I mean, there are a few components he bought, like the nichrome elements that are inside, but it was an object that didn't exist, and he fabricated it out of scrap metal that he had laying around, and he hooked it up to a laptop. So it has a dedicated laptop so that every time we roast the coffee beans, we can roast them on the same schedule. Like, for example, if you have a Burundi bean and you notice, oh, it tasted really good when we roasted it up to full city, and then, dropped it down, and it took this long to roast, and it was really full bodied, and it had a good crema, and it tasted amazing. Then, the computer logs all that. So you can remember the Guatemala tasted really good when we roasted it like this. And, coffee's unpredictable. It's hard to get the same results every time, but this is one way to systematize it and try to get consistent coffee roasting results. And so we buy our coffee 50 pounds at a time. We just buy green beans, and he roasts it twice a week. So it's always perfectly rested and just this delicious gourmet coffee for way, way cheaper than what we would normally spend if we were just buying it for $10 or $20 a pound. He can fix anything. He gets old used stuff that he refurbishes. Like our espresso machine, for example, it's like this $6,000 machine. I mean, we are pretty poor. We would never have a machine like this if it wasn't for him, that produces such exquisite quality coffee. I mean, it is just such a good machine. And he put the work in to refurbish it. And then, being an old machine, it needs attention from time to time, and he keeps it running. And he just amazes me, the things that he can do. And the money that he has saved me and saved us over the years by, fixing my car and creating stuff for me. When I make these images on fabric, you can use the sunlight to print the images, but that is really unpredictable, for a lot. I won't get into that, but he made me a LED UV light table. It's not anything that even exists. I just described my problem to him, and he brainstormed it, and he made me this entire piece of equipment. Like, there's nothing quite like this on the market. It doesn't exist. There are like maybe small versions of something somewhat similar, but printing in this really large format, it doesn't exist. And if it did, it would be like thousands of dollars. And he made this thing for me. I mean, he's a genius. And I love the way that he lets me be artistic and lets me be alone and have my solitude so I can do that. And I allow him to do the same thing. But we also have these different skill sets. And so he can solve problems in a way that I can't. And so we kind of stay out of each other's creative business, but every once in a while we will ask each other for feedback, and he can solve problems for me and I can solve problems for him because I have more experience with sewing and, working with ceramics, and it's just so amazing. So we don't really do any like true collaboration. We haven't yet, although I would love to, but we do really influence each other's work. And he just makes me feel so safe. It's kind of scary being poor and not having a lot of money. I feel like it's dangerous, like we're really living on the edge. We're just like moments away from everything falling apart. And I think a lot of people live like that. But his resourcefulness and ingenuity makes me feel so safe because he can make everything safe and okay. And he can fix things, and we're going to be okay. I really get that feeling from him. And I'm so highly neurotic, but he isn't. He is very calm. He's a very balanced, evolved person, I would say. And he's really even-tempered and just cool all the time. And so if I have, these moods, he really can calm me and center me. And I love that about him. And just one more thing that I love, this is very current. Just 3 days ago, I was at work. I was giving someone a massage and I was fantasizing about working with ceramics again. It's been about 15 years since I've worked with ceramics. So I came home and we were sitting in the back garden and I told him about how I was fantasizing about this. And he said, do it. Start working with clay again. Let's go to the clay supply store tomorrow and buy you a bag of clay. And I said, well, it's more involved than that. I can't just buy a bag of clay. There's other stuff that I need. And he said, well, I kept all your tools. Your kiln is in my workshop. There's 3 boxes of ceramic tools. Why don't you look through those and see if you still have all the stuff you need to get started? I totally forgot that I had a kiln. And I didn't know that he kept all these ceramic tools for me. When he hears me talking about working with clay, he can see how excited it makes me. And so he never got rid of any of that stuff. As promised, he drove me to the ceramic supply store the next day and I bought a bag of clay and just really $50 worth of supplies, and I had everything I needed. And by the end of the day, I was producing artwork. By the end of the very next day, when he heard me saying that I would like to work with clay again, he just could see it. I love him for seeing my vision and feeling it the way that I feel it, and really recognizing like that. Yeah, what you just said about clay, do that. You should do that. He could feel the energy of it and he recognized it. And I just love him for that. And right now I'm firing my kiln. I am doing a test fire. The kiln is still working after all these years, and I'm just going to start producing work. And I just love him for seeing that and supporting that. And he's smoking a chunk of pork right now because it's Labor Day. And I just love him for doing that, for creating this gourmet lifestyle for us on a shoestring budget. This man makes beer. He made prosciutto one time. He bought half a pig and made prosciutto. It took like 3 years. We have a meat curing refrigerator in our backyard where he makes his own salami, and he's just this genius guy, and it's amazing to see what he's excited about and what he wants to create. And it's amazing to have someone to talk to about what I'm excited about. And, he really supports my inspiration and I support his inspiration. And it's just such a wonderful way to live. So if you sat through all that, God bless you. It's my rambling, mushy story about how I met the love of my life at the dog park. So anyway, it's kind of embarrassing. But cheers, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. So tell me, how did you meet the love of your life?